In this video, we'll demonstrate how we go about examining the effect of the 4 different drugs that we're using as part of these experiments. Now you'll only need to choose 2 of these 4 drugs to analyze for your lab report, but the 4 drugs that we're using are adrenaline, caffeine, endothelin, and warbane. Now I think you're starting to get the idea of how we go about measuring the effect of various solutions on cardiac muscle contraction using this equipment, so we won't go into as much detail in this video, but let's have a look at what we're doing for adrenaline. Importantly, for each drug, we'll make sure that our tissue bath is well rinsed out and we put a new fresh piece of tissue in and let it equilibrate into normal ringers before we start each subsequent drug solution. As usual, we use the 1 in 30 macro to stimulate the muscle every 30 seconds until such time as the recordings become stable. And that last recording in normal ringers is shown here on page 9. So now we're going to add the adrenaline. And this is the adrenaline that we'll be using, and it comes in these little brown glass vials. And we'll be adding 30 microliters of the 1 milligram per mil adrenaline to the 3 ml tissue bath. And so we'll have a final concentration of adrenaline in the bath of 5.46 millimolar in normal ringers. And then here we are doing the first recording 18 seconds after the adrenaline was added. And we can see that there's a slight increase in the force of contraction already. And then here's the next reading on page 11, which shows an even bigger response. Now you can see this reading went off the screen, so we click auto scale to bring the readings back onto the screen again. Finally, as shown here, we recorded for about 6 minutes all up, and we found that the amplitude of the recordings on page 22 is about the same as the recordings on page 21, and so we feel like we've reached the maximum here. So we watched for a few more pages just to make sure, and again they're all looking quite stable, so we ended up stopping the recording on page 29. And so this is that same data file opened up in LabChart Reader, and you can see, like before, I've renamed the pages so you can see when we added the adrenaline. Right, now let's have a look at caffeine. Here's the new piece of tissue in normal ringers. And so then we ran the 1 in 30 second macro until the reading stabilized. And so we had stabilized by about page 7. And so then we added the caffeine ready for page 8. Now here we are adding the caffeine. Now to get enough caffeine to dissolve into the solution that we're adding, we had to use water, not Ringer's solution. And I think the concentration that we had made up here was such that when we added 20 microliters of it to the 3 ml water bath, we got a final concentration of 100 millimoles per liter of caffeine. And then we just let the macro continue to run, and you'll find that different treatments take different amounts of time to take effect. So the calcium and the adrenaline were very fast, for example. The caffeine shown here is somewhat intermediate, and the warbane, on the other hand, is extremely slow. Now, as usual, once we'd finished the experiment, we saved the data file, and then I relabeled the pages so you can see when the drug was added. And so you can then use this data file for your analysis. The data analysis that you need to perform is the same for each of the drug treatments, and it's shown here in your notes. And just as a reminder, you only need to choose 2 of the drug treatments to analyze for your lab report. A description of the lab report and the pro forma document that you'll need to do it will be released on Canvas once you've had a chance to go through this data yourself as part of this activity. Once again, these are the 4 drugs that you've got to choose from. And I think you're starting to get the idea now of how we go about testing each of these treatments. So in the interest of time, we won't go through the remaining 2 drug treatments since they're done in exactly the same way. And lastly, I hope these videos have been of some help to you in understanding how the data that we're giving you has been generated, and also showing you what we would have done had the class not been disrupted by COVID. So we're sorry about that, and best of luck for your lab report.